I want to keep it nice and simple, and that is why I've underlined the word simple there. Okay, nutrition should be dead simple. What you will see, and I'm sure you see on social media, on the news, in magazines, newspapers, on TV, is you should do this diet, that diet, this is good for you, this food's not good for you, this is processed, this is blah, 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 this is refined, this is a superfood. You hear all of these things. A lot of them might be fads, as in they're the latest thing. But what it comes down to, and what I've always taught, is keep it dead simple. If your gut feels like it's not right, gut being a good analogy I suppose in this one, but if your gut tells you it's not right and you shouldn't be eating it, it's probably right that you shouldn't be eating it. Likewise, if it's something that's raw and it's not been refined, it's probably a lot better for you than something that, for example, has been through a factory or has been refined, for example, in a mill, or comes in packaging and it's sat on the shelf for 2 months, but it says it's really good for you. But just to kick off, what is a diet? Open question to you guys. What is a diet?
Everything we eat.
Exactly right. Perfect. So a diet is everything you consume. Okay, people get this analogy in their head that a diet is all about being good. A diet is broken down by everything that you consume. So all the liquids, all of the food types that you eat, that is your diet. That is your daily diet, that is your weekly diet, that is your yearly diet. Now what we can manage within that is what's included in that diet, and that's the detail we're going to get into today. Those who choose to not eat necessarily the best things, which could be, for example, from Waitrose or from any store, is they are still following a diet. And the other thing I've already mentioned is just be aware of stuff like fad diets. I'm not going to name any, but there's multiple fad diets out there. You'll see them on social media being promoted or in magazines, and often they've got a little bit of a corporate backing, if you like, behind them. So just be aware and don't believe absolutely everything you see. Okay. Right. Alrighty. So trying to keep it really, really simple, and I don't want to give you death by PowerPoint, so we are going to breeze through this. So, simple nutrition truths, okay? Your body is made up of millions of cells, okay? And all body cells require nutrients to live, okay? So if we stopped eating, what would happen?
We die.
Well, not that you wouldn't die straight away.
Lose weight.
Yeah, but we would exactly that. So disease might kick in, and we might see deficiencies, skin colour might change, toenails might change, hair might change, all of these are cells that are actively working. Organs in the body might start to adapt, they might shut down, okay, if we were to reduce the nutrients required for our body. So simple, nice and clear, you are what you eat, okay? So if you were to eat burgers or pizzas or every day, has anyone seen, what is that documentary called about the chap who ate McDonald's from Soup Size Me? Has anyone seen that?
Yeah.
That is what's great about that documentary is it just shows, and this applies to eating, and I'm not just saying bad foods, but this applies to eating the same thing again and again and again. If I went onto a diet of just lean steak every day, and I just ate steak, it'd be really lean and be getting loads of protein in, but I wouldn't be, for example, getting the nutrients that I need from my vitamins and my minerals. Yeah, I wouldn't be getting the carbohydrate I need for energy, and therefore I'd probably begin to shut down, feel very lethargic. I might be absolutely ripped in terms of I'm getting so much protein, my muscles are loving it because I'm training so much, but my energy levels would be low because I wouldn't be getting what I need from what we call a balanced diet. Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make here is you are what you eat, and what we need is a good balance and a wide selection of foods from good sources, ideally. Okay. So when I say, for example, wide selection of foods, what do I mean there? Do you think?
Like your vegetables, your fruits, your meats, your proteins, your carbohydrates,
Absolutely sensational. Yeah.
So a combination of
Absolutely, a combination, and with ultimately every meal. Okay, so we're looking for a nice balanced diet. So what I've got to identify here is you've got your what known as your macronutrients, so your carbohydrates, your fats, and your proteins. Macro meaning big, and your micronutrients, which are smaller, which in often cases are trace nutrients, which are your vitamins and minerals. But if we don't have these combined, what we find is if we are lacking in vitamins and minerals, these are like, I've just put there, keys to unlock bodily processes. So without stuff like our vitamins and minerals, the carbohydrates, fats and proteins can't necessarily do their job in the body. Yeah. So what I'm getting at there is on our plate we need to see a wide selection of foods, because foods have different benefits, and we're going to go into those macros and those micros shortly, but also that they're coming from good sources. So this is where you start to think about organic, you start to think about refined. So for example, getting freshly picked vegetables compared to vegetables that have had a long process in terms of getting from field to store to you. Yeah? And then also think about water. Water is massively important. Again, it forms part of this whole tree, if you like, intertwining with your macros and your micros. Hugely important for temperature control, body content, and also transportation within our blood around the body of those nutrients that we need. Okay, make sense? Cool. Shout out if anything is unclear or you have any questions. So, how does that look? Okay, so I've said on a nice shared plate, what we want to look at is everybody has got differing goals, and everyone in this room has got differing goals. So a normal diet, or if you like, a recommended diet, a Western-based diet is between 50 to 60% of carbohydrate. Okay, 15 to 20% of protein and 20 to 35% of fat. That is a typical diet. Okay, and often recommended by the likes of the National Health Service. Okay. However, if you've got different goals, these percentages might change. Okay, so for example, I've given a couple of examples of a high protein or a weight loss based diet for those who are wanting, for example, to refine their diet and burn fat. Okay, those, for example, who are sporting, depending on their sport, obviously there's different sports that require different physical requirements, and they will again adapt carbohydrate, protein, fat. For example, if you have endurance runners or triathletes, they're going to most probably have a higher carbohydrate load. Rugby players will be the same. Yeah, but rugby players slightly different because they also need that strength and that power, whereas your endurance runners are going to be really looking at that carbohydrate, okay, to fuel them. And what we're going to go into is look at carbohydrate, protein and fat and what their requirements are. So another one, and I can share these slides with you, is just to understand the energy values of our nutrients. They are not all the same. Okay, so when you see the back of your packaging, you will see it's got so many grams of carbohydrate in, it's got so many grams of fat, trans fats, etc. So what we can see here is 1 gram of carbohydrate equals 4 calories. Okay, so you will see kilocalories, but that's also known as kcals. Okay, that is ultimately the abbreviation for that is your calories. So you've got carbohydrate based on 4 calories, fats, so a gram of fat is 9 calories, protein 4 calories, and alcohol 7. I just had to put up alcohol. I don't know why, it just has to go up. And the great thing, water, if we added that on the bottom, is 0. Okay, so water's a freebie. We get our value for money from our water. Now, what is interesting about that is what is heavier, a gram of fat or a gram of carbohydrate?
I guess fat.
You'd be wrong. They're exactly the same.
Yeah,
A gram and a gram. Yeah. It was a trick question. Sorry, Sam. Normally catches some. It's like feathers and feathers and bricks. No. But what the point I'm making with that, so if we were to have a gram of carbohydrate compared to a gram of fat, obviously we're going to be consuming a lot more calories, okay, from that gram of fat than we are from your carbohydrate. Okay. Now this is not yet going into how quickly, for example, our blood sugars, etc., respond to different types of carbohydrate. Okay. So, programming for weight change, or what I like to call fat loss. Now, this is quite a common one, and that's the reason I've included it here in terms of people's goals, especially I think with the clientele that we have at Bootcamp, is a lot of people are looking for, they come here and they say, we want to lose weight. Is it you want to lose weight, or is it you actually don't necessarily worry too much about what it says on the scales, and it's actually you just want to lean down, you potentially want to look better in the mirror, and just, if you like, become a little leaner in terms of that body shape. Okay, so just be clear in terms of what we're thinking. So you can have a positive energy balance. Okay, and this is going back to a sports performance standpoint. This might be someone who's looking for hypertrophy, which is increase in muscle mass, okay, and therefore they may be looking at consuming more calories per day than they are burning, yeah, and that's purely because their intention is to become heavier. So for example, if I gave you an example of me, after I had my knee operation a year ago, I dropped down to about 78, 79 kilos. For me, that is very light, okay? So what I've been doing over the last 12 months is eating in excess and increasing my weight training, and therefore fueling myself to make sure I'm getting the maximum out of my weight training, okay? As a result, I'm now at 86 kilos, and that's where I want. And now what I've got to do, or what I've done, is adapted my nutrition based on what my goals are. So I don't want to put any more weight on, because out on the rugby field, if I become too heavy, I slow down. So I'm at my optimal weight now, so now I'm at a maintenance stage where I just want to manage that. I don't want to increase weight, I don't want to decrease weight, yeah? The other side of that is a negative energy balance. So for those who potentially do want that weight loss, do want that fat burn, and this can be done in a number of ways. So in both these analogies, we need to build in our physical effect as well, okay? So that is the amount of calories that you're burning, which your watch might be telling you, your heart rate monitor might be telling you, but the excess calories that you're burning due to exercise. Does that make sense? Yeah, so when you do a boot camp, for example, your watch might tell you at the end that you've burned between 700 and 1,000 calories, okay? That is on top of your daily average burn, okay? So therefore, if you have got a negative energy balance, what that will be is what your body requires in terms of calories just to operate on a daily basis, okay? Plus the extra energy calories that you have burnt during any workout or exercise that you've done that day. Does that make sense? And as a roundabout, if you can achieve a 500 calorie surplus, that will achieve, so that's every day of the week, okay, that will achieve a half a kilo weight loss per week, okay? So if you add all that together, that's 3,500 calorie deficit through the week, then you should achieve a half kilo loss per week. Does that make sense? Yeah, and that's purely because we are burning more than we are consuming. Yeah, so we have that negative energy balance. I'm flying through this, so if anything's unclear, please do shout. Okay, so let's get a little bit deeper. So again, going to fly through this. Vitamins, we've said a number of these things already, but they are organic substances, often found or mostly found in your vegetables, your fruits, organic. They act by promoting a specific chemical reaction in a metabolic process. Okay, so your metabolism being that burning, thinking about the body, thinking how it processes. Without vitamins on board, I'm going to give you some examples shortly, these processes cannot take place. Okay, you hear about your superfoods, the likes of your kale, your spinach, avocados, blueberries, those kind of things. That is because they are jam-packed full of vitamins and minerals. Okay, and they call them superfoods because they have so much compactly built into them that they unlock so many of these bodily processes that allow the macronutrients to do their job, for example. Yeah, and organs to be nice and healthy and to do what they do. If a certain vitamin is lacking, the metabolic process will not take place, and the end potential result is disease. Okay, disease or illness. Again, going back to what I was saying at the start, we start to see if people are lacking in a certain nutrient, we start to see changes, for example, skin colour, hair, eyes, fingernails, all of the rest of that. Does that make sense? Yeah? Cool, so what are the functions? So, to give you, I will share these slides afterwards, but just to give you a few ideas, you've got your fat-soluble vitamins, and I want to overemphasise that, we will touch on it when we get to our fats, fat-soluble. So what that means is we've got to have fats in our diet in order to absorb those vitamins. Okay, does that make sense? If we are lacking in fat, our body is not as efficient as taking on the vitamins A, D, E and K. Okay, what do those vitamins do? You've got the likes of assisting with good vision, teeth, bones, absorption of calcium. Why is calcium important? Does anyone know? Silence. It's a bit more scientific. So calcium is a major player in muscle contraction. Okay, so I won't get into the science of it, but for muscle contraction, calcium is stored in your bones. So that's where that kind of, you're taught at school, drink your milk because it keeps healthy bones. Calcium is stored in your bones and then continuously transported around the body in the bloodstream and filters in when you ask a muscle to contract, floods into that muscle to force that muscle contraction. So calcium is really, really important for muscle contraction, therefore movement. We've got anti-clotting, absorption of calcium. Then you've got your water soluble. So this is where hydration comes. I've just said fat soluble, we require fat in the diet. Water soluble, you really need that good content of water. What is the recommended intake of water per day?
Depends on your weight.
It does. As a broad, what do the NHS, for example, recommend? 2 to 3 litres a day. Yeah, and here at Beyond Any Limits, we recommend that you hit that 3 litre mark. Especially if you're working with us. Again, you've got that heightened, if you like, output from the likes of boot camps or personal training. So just making sure, or as simple as in this hot weather, if you're going out and walking, you need to replenish those water supplies. Yeah. Now, just to get into another one, for example, another question to you actually. How much water should you, should you take any stimulants within your drink? For example, electrolytes, if you were just doing a 1 hour boot camp? What do you think? No. And you'd be exactly right. So the recommendation would be exercise up to an hour, you're good with water. Okay. After an hour, your electrolytes begin to diminish, and that is when you might be looking. So if you're doing something like a long distance run that's going to take over an hour, say we're doing something for charity where we're doing a 3 hour boot camp or something like that, then that's when you want to replenish. And the likes of if you play a sport, if in the middle of a netball match or a rugby match, football match, anything that you do is start thinking about that. If you've got 2 40-minute halves or quarters, or that's my lack of knowledge of netball, but yeah, it's just think about, okay, well, I know that water's not going to do the job for the duration that I'm going to be playing, so therefore I need to get potentially an electrolyte stimulant just in there, just to give me a little kick. Why are you smiling, Ellie?
I used to eat horrible things like jelly.
Yes, yeah, there is that, and everyone thinks it's just sugar.
Yeah.
But well, at least it's half-time oranges as well. That's how it used to be on
that.
there.
So it was like raw jelly.
Yeah, and that will, for example, what you're looking at there is, and we'll touch on that when we get around to the carbohydrates, but you're getting that sugar kick.
Yeah.
And the raw jelly, because it quickly floods the blood. So suddenly you get that stimulus, you're getting that carbohydrate feed, but you're not necessarily getting the other goodness. For example, your electrolytes replenish through sweating. Yeah, exactly. For 40 minutes, you feel fantastic, and then you have a major crash after that. Exactly. Superb. So just going to water soluble, there your B vitamins, your vitamin C, looking at immune function, wound healing, and absorption of iron. Super work. Okay, minerals, just nice and quick on these. Make up just 3% of body weight. So really remember with these, your micros. So very, very small. Found soft tissues, fluids, and skeleton. 3 key functions from your minerals: strength and rigidity, regulation of bodily fluids, and enzymes and proteins that we're going to get onto shortly. So again, really, really important for our body to get those minerals on board. And again, normally found and flooded into the likes of your vegetables and your fruits. Everyone with me so far? We're flying. God, 20 minutes already. Okay, so carbohydrates. We're going to whiz through this. Main source of energy, okay, they are the body's go-to. But that is why I put on their body and brain. So for physical fitness, as we've just touched on there, you'd have your jelly because it's full of sugar, and carbohydrate is sugar. Okay, so the primary product is sugar. You get different types of carbohydrate. You can have slow releasing carbs, you can have high releasing carbs. High releasing carbs are, and I just want to touch on this bit at the bottom here, and play with your insulin response. Okay, so for example, a jelly or Haribo sweets, or there is actually a term for, I'm going to swear, it's called shit, okay? And shit is an abbreviation for sugar high insulin trauma, okay? And what happens there, this is your kind of white breads, your white pastas, your refined products, and they're refined because they've been put through a mill or put through a plant, and they've ultimately taken all of the goodness of the grain out. So it tastes great on our taste buds, and we want more. But also, so it is quick to digest. And the issue you have there is, as you digest it, you consume it. Chinese takeaway would be a great example. Okay, you consume it, you feel really full very, very quickly. But what happens there is it quickly exits the gut, into the intestines, floods into your bloodstream very, very quickly. And if I'm going to draw an imaginary graph here. Okay, if this is my blood sugar level, I consume and it goes up very, very quickly. Yeah, so that is your sugar high. Okay, when we get to that high, what happens is the pancreas will release insulin. Okay, and that is the transporter. Insulin then transports that sugar in the blood to where it is required. So the muscles, or, well, not necessarily required, hopefully deposited to the muscles where you're using it. Okay, but if you're sedentary, that can often then be broken down and actually stored as fats. Okay, and that is where, for example, if you're sedentary, you're not moving as much, you get the build-up of fat, and that is your adipose tissue that sits just below the skin. We'll go on to fat shortly. So we've had that sugar high. Insulin kicks in and brings you back down. And the more aggressive that sugar high is, the more insulin that needs to be released and then transported. Does that make sense? So what happens? We get that feeling of being full, sugar high, and then that insulin trauma that brings us down. And then when that happens, and we get right to the bottom, we go, oh, I'm hungry again. So the message to the brain is, I need something now, I've got to eat. Because gut is emptied really quickly, flooded into the bloodstream, giving us that sugar high. We're now getting that insulin trauma. So guess what? We grab some more shitty food and we do it again. Yeah? And then down. The great analogy I like to give of this is cake day at work. Has everyone worked in an office? You know, when it's someone's birthday, it's like, get that donuts in. What? That is the worst thing you can do, because all you're doing all day is this. And then you get to that lethargic, which is when you're coming down and you collapse and the insulin's really around 2 o'clock in the afternoon when you just like wake up.
Oh my god, it actually is always 2 o'clock as well.
Exactly! Exactly! And that is really because you're going through that yo-yo effect. However, so if we start thinking about the carbohydrates we're consuming, what we can do is think about slow releasing carbs. Okay, so these are your unrefined carbohydrates. So these are where the whole of the grain, the germ, for example, the fibre, is still locked in. And what happens there, so this is more your whole grain foods, okay, so your whole grain pastas, your whole grain breads, stuff like sourdoughs, is they will give a slow, sustained release through the day, okay? And then what you'll do is you'll have your breakfast, have a nice slow release, yeah? So you might have whole grain oats, yeah, porridge for breakfast. That will give you a slow release. You then get to lunch, okay? You don't need your 11Zs because your body is, because it's slow releasing, your gut is telling your brain you're not hungry, so you don't get that mid-morning, I've got to grab something. You get to lunch, you replenish what you've eaten, so that might be, for example, sourdough with some, I don't know, nice protein filling and a nice salad inside that, let's say, sandwich. That again gives you a slow release through the afternoon. You might have a mid-afternoon snack, okay, but again, that can be another replenish of something that is whole grain, locked in with full of nutrients, okay, which again is going to see you through to the evening, which is your dinner, and then bed in the evening, okay? Rather than having cereal for breakfast, Crunchy Nut Cornflakes. I absolutely love Crunchy Nut Cornflakes. They are my fall down. Okay, Crunchy Nut Cornflake, boom, 11 o'clock, more Crunchy Nut Cornflakes because I'm hungry. And then you get to lunch and then you have a bagel with, I don't know what on. And then you get to mid-afternoon, you're starting to fall asleep, so you need that extra kick. You have a donut or a cake or whatever's on the side in the kitchen in the office. And also being at home, that's tough as well, isn't it? You know, finding stuff in the fridge. And then that yo-yo effect all the way. So what we want to do with our carbohydrates, guys, is eat good quality. You also get carbohydrates from your green leafy vegetables as well. So they're full of those good sugars as well as some of your fruits. Some are better than others, but they can be locked in with. So it's all about choices is the point I'm trying to get across there. Okay. Okay, so what I want to do is just show you there's something that we call the glycemic index, okay, and this is a measure of how quickly those foods flood your blood, okay. I will share these with you, but there's lots of examples in there, and what you might be surprised to see is, for example, the higher the number, okay, the quicker that is going to flood your blood, Okay, and the more aggressive that spike is going to be in terms of your sugar levels in your blood. Okay, so you probably identify a few that are on there. And the other thing, just stuff like instant porridge, brown bread, wholemeal is another one. That's kind of a cheat in the industry. Yeah, wholemeal is not whole grain. Okay, they've taken white, potentially dyed it, put a little bit of goodness into it, but it is not whole grain. It will often, in many cases, will be refined and therefore still give you that sugar high. Okay, so there's just some examples. On the right hand side are some swaps, some lower levels which might be better for you. Okay. The other thing just to note on all of these is I've obviously put some pretty generic, like muesli, all brand. You can get different brands and you need to pay attention to the food labels on those. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, right, so fats. Okay, so fats can be an energy source, really, really important for our insulation, yeah, especially in this cold country that we live in. Not so good when we get to hot, warm climates like we've had in the last kind of 3 months. Adipose tissue, that is your layer of fat cells just below the skin. Okay, so that is ultimately what happens there is your cells can multiply. Okay, fat cells cannot be broken down easily. So once you have those fat cells, it can be it's very hard for the body to break those down. They can reduce in size, but to actually have them taken away that doesn't really happen, which is why you get stuff like tummy tucks and bits and pieces like that. Okay, so but important for keeping us nice and warm. Protection of organ cells, and very important for the central nervous system along our neurological pathways, okay, and protection there. And they are needed in the diet, as I've already said, for those fat-soluble vitamins as an example, as well as other bodily processes. You have your essential fatty acids required to unlock bodily processes, maintain structure of cell membranes, regulate cholesterol metabolism, and you can get good and bad cholesterols. Reduce tendency for blood clotting, and the key ones we're looking for there, guys, within your diet is a good supply of omega-3 and omega-6. Where are you going to get those from? Fish oils are a great example of that. You can get them from, in fact, they come up a bit later, so I'll give you some sources on those. The ones we want to steer clear from, if you see hydrogenation or trans fat on any packaging, stay away from it. Okay? These are fats that have been completely refined, have been completely adapted and put under huge amounts of pressure to change the actual format, the structure of those fats. So they taste good. These are the likes of cakes, margarine, ultimately fatty products that we know that are not good for us. Biscuits, yeah? They taste great, but the body does not know what to do with them. So straight away, what it will do is store those fats because it's a complex structure that it really doesn't know what to do with. Yeah? Does that make sense? Your dietary sources of fat, so what can we look at, knowing that we do need fat, is look more at your meat fats, okay, in quantity. Remember what I said right at the start, in balance. So we're not going to have red meat all the way through the week. We're going to mix that up. So we're going to get our fats from your meat fats, your red meats, but be aware of your cholesterol. White meats, which are your, if you like, your leaner meats, okay? But you can also look for your red meats, you can get 5% fat mince, for example. But the point I'm trying to make is don't eat it every day. Yeah, remember what we said straight away at the start is just try to keep good variety. Dairy fats, so you've got milk, yogurt, cheese, butter, all of these having in moderation, thinking about what you're going to have via breakfast. A lot of people like to have yogurt as part of their breakfast. Completely fine, but have it in moderation. Don't flood the bowl. Just because it's yogurt doesn't mean it's good for you. Yeah? A lot of people fall into that trap. Eggs, likewise, really good, but have them in moderation. Yeah, I eat a lot of eggs to fulfill my protein goal. Fish oils, your omega-3, salmon, sardines, mackerel, cod, tuna, yeah. Intertwine this with your meats, okay, so, because what you're obviously getting here as well with these fish is you're getting a good amount of protein as well in addition to your meats there. And then your vegetable fats, this is where you want to be looking at good vegetable oils, so using the correct oils at the right time. So for example, having the likes of olive oil sprinkled over a salad, that's a great way of getting some good fats on board. Yeah. Avocado, it's almost a superfood. Yeah, and I love them. Olives, nuts, coconuts, all options as well. Okay, right.
If you make a cake with butter, that's all right then.
Well. Remember what I said about moderation. Moderation. What we will do go through in the future is actually the quantities that you want to be consuming each day. But just think about what I showed you right at the start in terms of if you've got that breakdown of 50% carbohydrate, 30-20, is just making sure your fats don't exceed on a daily basis. Yeah. I do like a cake as well. Okay, but final one we're going to go through, protein. What it's really important for is your growth and repair. Key for growth is obviously as we're getting older in terms of age, you need to make sure that protein is part of your diet. Also with your training, it's going to really complement that training. So if you up your training, if you've got a particular goal, for example, muscle gain, is think about your protein content, but think about getting good proteins on board. Repair, if you ever get injured, okay, or you have an operation, for example, with my knee, again, going back to that, ACL reconstruction, in order to aid that repair of the body, I upped my protein intake, okay, and that was, I was eating within my daily diet, but I also supplemented that with a protein shake as well, which I do at the same time with my training. Protein will give you the sensation of feeling fuller for longer. So remember what I said about that gastric emptying, is if you're feeling fuller for longer, it doesn't give you that sensation of having to go for your 11Zs, your mid-afternoon to go and grab something and raid the fridge. Yeah? Does that make sense? So it gives you that sensation. So make sure we've got some good proteins in our breakfast, our lunch and our dinners. Make hormones and enzymes in extreme cases can be used as an energy source, but that is extreme. That's like walking through the desert. You've used all your fat, all of your carbohydrate and your low line on protein, which will be broken down. And it is made up of chemical building blocks called amino acids. Okay, and this is literally where I just want to finish. Okay, so your protein's built up of amino acids. You get complete and incomplete proteins. Okay, a complete protein will have sufficient levels of all of your essential amino acids. Okay, does that make sense? Now the difficulty with this, based on that diagram, so if you thought of each one of those as a line graph, okay, and there'd be, let's stand up there. So this was a line, this was a line, this was a line. It had different levels within each one, and you had to meet this criteria, this level, to be classified as a complete protein. Then all of those graphs would be up here for a complete protein. I'm going to give you examples of that. Incomplete proteins may be sufficient in this one, and this one, but this amino acid, it doesn't have enough in. This one doesn't have enough in, and therefore it doesn't meet the criteria to be a essential amino acid. Sorry, a complete protein. It's an essential amino acid, as we're going to go on to, because the body cannot process or develop that amino acid on its own. Okay, non-essential amino acids, it can. The body can create those proteins on its own. Not the essential amino acids, they're essential because we have to have them as part of our diet. Does that make sense? I haven't explained that one that well, but we can come back to it if you have any questions. So, complete proteins. Dairy products, eggs, fish, meat, poultry. Okay, they will have sufficient levels of those amino acids, okay, to be counted as a complete protein. Okay. However, obviously, if you have someone, for example, who's a vegetarian, they're going to struggle to meet because they can't eat those. Okay. So what they will then need to look at is looking at their diet and looking at those amino acids to make sure they're getting those essential amino acids from a sum of different types of protein. So, for example, corn, rice, beans, pulses, lentils. Okay, these are also great sources of proteins, but they're not your complete proteins. But if we add those together, we can then meet. So we've got each of those essential amino acids as per that chain and that graph that I was trying to draw on there. Does that make sense? Yeah, we're flying through this. Right. Cool. We do have, you have fast acting and slow acting proteins as well. We're going to go through that another time because time is flying. We need to get outside. But things to put into practice as a result of this. And if you guys have any questions, we can catch up out of here anyway. Is your calorie balance achieving your goals? Are you achieving your growth, more of the right stuff, or fat loss, thinking that deficit that we covered at the start? Yeah? Timing of meals, what's your metabolism doing? Think about that graph that I showed you in terms of those sugar high insulin traumas. Okay, are you eating before bed? Yeah, that is a classic analogy of that. If you're eating before bed, say, I think there was even an advert that did it where you had crunchy nut cornflakes before bed. That all that is doing is giving that sugar high. So are you going to get a good night's sleep that night? Probably not, because your body, you've just woken your body up and now it's got sugar and lots of carbohydrate and energy pumped into it that it needs to use. Yeah. Whereas if we have something like a glass of milk, which has got a good balance of whey and casein in it, casein protein being a slow release, okay, that's going to give you that sensation of fuller for longer through the night. Yeah, so you don't wake up all hungry, but it also gives you that, remember what I said about the proteins, gives you that sensation of feeling fuller for longer. So you should be content with that. Think your GI, think your proteins in terms of feeling fuller for longer. Your high GI foods, so quick sugar response, 2 minutes, will be, they'll give you that flooded blood and then they will give you that sensation of you want to eat soon. Think about the quality of food. Is it processed? Is it refined? Has it come? Is it fresh? Has it come fresh out the field? Okay, the fresher it is, more likelihood the better it's going to be for you. Yeah. Are you getting everything you need? So we've touched on proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, minerals. Can you look at this presentation, go through what we've gone over the last half an hour? Is there anything you think that you're potentially not, that kind of jumps out to you? If you want to have a chat about that, by all means, we can. Are you hydrating? Massively important. We said 3 litres is what we recommend at Beyond Any Limits. So make sure we're hitting those hydration goals. Are you sleeping? That has a huge impact on your metabolism. I am a master sleeper. I'm very good at it and I very much appreciate it. But I have to have 8 hours of sleep a night. Otherwise, I am grumpy. You wouldn't ever think that, would you? Me being grumpy. I also get really hangry. So if I don't eat, I get really hungry. Don't ask my wife about that, but yeah, she'll tell you firsthand. And all this, guys, comes back down to, it does take meal prep and planning to put all of this into place. I've chucked loads of information at you, but do take time and put time into your meal prep and planning. Otherwise, you will find yourself raiding the fridge, buying a chocolate bar as you're walking past the shop, that kind of thing, just to give that sensation, just to feed yourself. Okay, we get lethargic, we get tired, and that's when we get lazy and our brain tells us just grab the nearest thing. Yeah, so let's try and prevent that from happening. Think metabolism. Right, any questions? If you do have any questions, we can ask those when we're outside. Thank you guys, I hope you enjoyed that.